Let's take a swing at how fighters can attain overwhelming power in D&D 5e. So if you're like me, you might actually view fighters as bland or even boring. In my games, it's actually pretty rare that I see someone take up arms as a fighter. Melee combatants often go with barbarian or monk, and ranged weapon specialists go with ranger or rogue. But there's a few key fighter hallmarks that they tend to overlook. Namely that fighters can be good at anything. They're bland in the same way that a blank page might be boring for a reader, but exciting for a writer. You can just as easily make a frontline tank, a sneaky archer assassin, or something truly unspeakable. Because combat is the only part of the game that matters, right? Right? With that in mind, you'll most often want to prioritize your fighter's strength or dexterity score depending on what kinds of weapons you'd like to use, followed up by constitution for some extra hit points and to feed into that mystery build that I'll cover a bit later. From there, you'll probably want to place intelligence, wisdom, and charisma in some order depending on your character's background or the roleplay style that you're leaning towards. This, of course, means you'll want to select a species option that gives you a nice boost to either strength or dexterity and constitution, or maybe even all three. So humans, dwarves, bugbears, and Goliaths offer great boosts and some cool flavor for most fighters. But there really are plenty of options that work well here. Then at level 1, your fighter will have a beefy D10 hit die, proficiency in all armor, shields, simple and martial weapons, strength and constitution saving throws, and any 2 skills from acrobatics, animal handling, athletics, history, insight, intimidation, perception, and survival. Also at level 1, you'll learn a fighting style that'll synergize with your weapon and armor choices, choosing from quite a number of options. Archery will give you a +2 to attack rolls with ranged weapons. Defense grants you a +1 to your AC while wearing armor. Dueling gives a +2 to damage rolls when wielding a weapon in one hand. Great weapon fighting allows you to re-roll 1s and 2s on damage die for melee weapons wielded with 2 hands. Protection spends your reaction to impose disadvantage on an attack against another creature within 5 feet of you while wearing a shield. Yes, it sucks. 2-weapon fighting adds your ability modifier to the damage of your second attack. Blind fighting affords you the ability to fight in total darkness and see invisible creatures within 10 feet. Interception is a better version of protection that uses your reaction to reduce the damage to a creature within 5 feet of you by 1d10 plus your proficiency bonus. Superior technique allows you to learn a maneuver from the Battlemaster archetype that we'll cover later with a d6 superiority die that comes back on a short rest. Thrown weapon fighting gives you a +2 to damage rolls with ranged attacks with thrown weapons, and unarmed fighting affords you better punches than the base monk with 1d6 plus your strength mod, or 1d8 if you aren't using weapons or a shield, while also automatically dealing 1d4 to any creature grappled by you at the start of your turn. As you can see, fighters can clearly excel in a number of areas and are a no-brainer for grapple builds that utilize the really overpowered unarmed fighting style. Some monks might even do well to take a level in fighter first, but that's still not all that you get at first level. Your fighter will also unlock their second wind ability that allows them to regain hit points equal to 1d10 plus your fighter level as a bonus action once per short rest. That's really fantastic in the early game and still pretty useful at later levels. However, what we really want out of fighter will grab at level 2 when we unlock Action Surge, a feature that allows us to use an additional action during a turn once per short rest. Sure, that might just end up being an extra attack for now, but you'll see later how this one feature can be used to game-breaking effect. Just you wait. But for now, let's move on to level 3, where we'll get to choose our martial archetype subclass. This choice will go a long way in determining how you focus in on your fighter's wide array of talents and will grant you abilities at 3rd, 7th, 10th, 15th, and 18th level. That said, let's cover each of these subclasses at a surface level so you get an idea of what they're all about. And we begin with one of my favorites in the Arcane Archer. This subclass is great for ranged fighters that want to add a bit of magical flavor to the bolts they fire. You'll gain a proficiency in either Arcana or Nature and learn either the Prestidigitation or Druidcraft cantrip right off the bat, along with 2 uses of your Arcane Shot key feature, per short rest. This is what will allow you to empower attacks that use a short bow or long bow, and you'll get to choose 2 from options like banishing a creature to the Feywild for a turn or ensnaring them in poisonous brambles that deal extra damage if they move. There are 8 options as of this video that will fill just about any flavor fantasy that you might have as you level up and gain access to more of them. But do know that they'll rely on your intelligence score for calculating the saving throw DC that your targets will be going up against for each effect. Personally, I feel as though wisdom would have made more sense thematically, and even that can leave a fighter build stretched relatively thin between strength or dexterity, constitution, and now a third stat you need to rely on. From there, you'll get magic arrows that overcome monster resistances against non-magic attacks, and the ability to redirect an arrow that misses its target to a new one within 60 feet by using a bonus action. 15th level sees you regain a use of your arcane shot if you roll initiative and have no uses left, and then 18th level sees the damage of those arcane shot options increase by 2d6. Is this the best fighter subclass? No. Not even close, but it can be viable with most playgroups, and the flavor adds a lot to the base class that can often boil down to just swinging a sword around every turn. Though the Battlemaster subclass reminds us that there's not necessarily anything wrong with waving around a sword. Going this route, in fact, means you'll look pretty damn cool doing it. Battlemasters rely on combat maneuvers that utilize special D8s called superiority dice, of which you'll have 4 to spend per short rest at 3rd level. Similar to Arcane Archer, these maneuvers will sometimes include a saving throw for your enemies, but this time the DC for that saving throw will be calculated off of your strength or dexterity modifier. Much better. That in mind, you'll get to pick 3 maneuvers to begin, and you'll end up with as many as 9 later, choosing from nearly 25 available options that are mostly useful and extremely flavorful. Later on, you'll be able to ascertain certain stats of enemy monsters and NPCs, increase your superiority die to a D10, regain a die when you enter combat with none left, and finally increase that die to a D12 at 18th level. Listen, if I was to go over every maneuver for Battlemaster, we'd be here all day. So instead, I'll just leave you with this. The Battlemaster fighter is the best fighter in the game. No matter what you're trying to accomplish with your character, the Battlemaster offers unparalleled versatility and doubles down on the fighter's usefulness in combat while being quite front-loaded as well. On the flip side, we have the Cavalier, a fighter subclass aimed mostly at mounted combat, which is known to be pretty clunky in 5e. But that aside, you'll at least get an extra skill proficiency in animal handling, history, insight, performance, or persuasion, an extra language of your choice, and an ability that punishes a creature you hit for hitting your allies. You'll also get advantage against falling from your mount right away at 3rd level, which makes it a bit better. You can also dismount for only 5 feet of movement speed and land on your feet if you do happen to fall off, but all this mounted complexity really just affords you a better movement speed when you're riding your horse or whatever, unless you invest in some other feats. Regardless, your Cavalier will eventually be able to use a reaction to roll a d8 and add it to a creature's AC after a creature is hit within 5 feet of you. Later, you can use an opportunity attack and reduce a creature's speed to 0 if it moves more than 5 feet while within your reach. You can charge into enemies to knock them prone if you move more than 10 feet beforehand, and gain a special reaction opportunity attack that you can use once on every creature's turn other than yours. All in all, this subclass is actually better than it looks. What hurts it here is really just being tied to the poor optics of mounted combat in 5e, and not really getting a whole lot for it either. But if you want to be a badass rider of Rohan, this is how you do it. Next, let's cover the champion subclass. These fighters are similar to the Battlemaster, but trade off some of that patented versatility in exchange for honing their skills in raw strength. Right away, you'll be able to score a critical hit when rolling a 20 or a 19 on the die, making this a pretty interesting choice for crit fishing builds. Later on, you'll be able to add half your proficiency bonus rounded up to any strength, dexterity, or constitution checks that don't already use your proficiency bonus. Then choose a second option from the fighting style class feature we looked at earlier, crit on 18s, 19s, and 20s, and eventually regain 5 plus your constitution modifier in hit points if you have no more than half your hit points left at the start of your turn every single turn. What makes this subclass so great is that it's so extremely simple. If you're a new player and want something akin to a barbarian without being as much of a big oaf, then you should consider the champion. The Eldritch Knight, on the other hand, can get pretty complex for a newcomer. It's an extremely popular option for anyone that wants to play a melee combatant with some extra spellcasting flavor like the Arcane Archer. This subclass, however, gains access to the spellcasting feature rather than some flavor abilities that imitate certain spells. So right away at 3rd level, you'll gain access to Abjuration and Evocation wizard spells and 2 cantrips of your choice, with another one at 10th level. And you'll get spell slots to use corresponding to this table. As you might guess, this subclass will also rely on your intelligence modifier for spell attack bonuses and spell save DCs, but you'll often find that you don't need to pay much attention to it. As a fighter with spellcasting, you'll probably want to pick up options like Booming Blade, Shield, Absorb Elements, and Mirror Image that pay no mind at all to your intelligence score and can really increase your survivability and damage output as a melee combatant. In addition to being able to magically summon your weapon to your hand as a bonus action, your fighter will also later be able to make a bonus action weapon attack when they use an action to cast a cantrip, as well as impose disadvantage on the next saving throw a creature makes against your spells when you hit it, teleport 30 feet when you use your action surge, and make a weapon attack as a bonus action when you cast a spell with your action at 18th level. Where this subclass really shines is in mid to early tiers of play when your fighter feels even more powerful and invulnerable with some extra spellcasting flair. Though at the end of the day, there are other better ways to do what the Eldritch Knight does, but it's still a pretty nice option regardless. Otherwise, you could always try going with the Psi Warrior. These fighters are basically the Jedi of D&D, wielding telekinetic powers that improve their martial prowess. When you take the subclass at 3rd level, your fighter will get access to a number of D6 psionic energy dice that you can expend to activate your special abilities, such as a protective field that reduces the amount of damage a creature takes, a psionic strike that increases the damage of an attack, and telekinetic powers that allow you to move objects with your mind. Yeah, they're Jedi. Later on, you'll get more Star Wars ripoffs like a Force Jump and Force Push, become more or less immune to being charmed and frightened, give your allies half cover for a minute as a bonus action, and cast the telekinesis spell as an action and make a weapon attack as a bonus action while it's active. If anything, I'd say these are a lateral move from the aforementioned Eldritch Knight, but the flavor is on point if that's what you're looking for. And now we arrive at the Purple Dragon Knight, an option that somewhat feels thematically akin to a paladin that has sworn an oath to protect the kingdom of Cormyr. As such, your DM may not allow them in their world, but they can be reflavored easily enough if necessary. Starting at 3rd level, you can heal 3 allies by your fighter level when you use your Second Wind feature, and you'll later gain proficiency in Persuasion or one of Animal Handling, Insight, Intimidation, or Performance if you're already proficient. Eventually, you can enable an ally to attack with you using a reaction when you utilize Action Surge, allow an ally to re-roll a failed save, and finally allow an extra ally to attack when you Action Surge. Now, I mentioned before that your DM may not allow you to use this subclass in their world, and honestly, you might not want them to. If you like this flavor, you should probably just play a paladin, because most of the features are just worse versions of the base paladin class abilities. But don't worry, the Rune Knight is here with a ton of great flavor and awesome abilities to cleanse your palate. This subclass chooses to enhance their might using magic from the runes of giants. So at 3rd level, you'll gain proficiency with Smith's tools and learn Giant as a language, in addition to being able to carve out 2 of 6 available giant runes into various items to empower yourself. These runes' effects all vary, but they're all pretty useful depending on what you're up to. And if you need something different than what you have, you'll gain access to more and can swap out runes you know, as you level. But we still aren't done with level 3, as you'll be able to imbue yourself with the Might of Giants for a full minute as a bonus action, allowing you to change your size to large, have advantage on strength checks and strength saving throws, and deal an extra 1d6 damage once per turn with a weapon or unarmed strike. From there, you can force an enemy to re-roll a hit against one of your allies as a reaction, upgrade that 1d6 extra damage to 1d8, invoke the same rune twice instead of just once to imbue separate items, and finally upgrade that 1d8 to 1d10, increase your size to huge, and boost your reach by 5 feet when utilizing the aforementioned feature. Overall, the Rune Knight isn't broken, but they are a very solid subclass with a flavor that can't really be found elsewhere in 5e. Speaking of amazing flavor, we now come to the Samurai. These fighters showcase an unbreakable resolve, a tireless spirit, and a well-honed style of combat. When you take the subclass, you'll get proficiency in either history, insight, performance, persuasion, or any one language of your choice, as well as the ability to give yourself advantage on your attacks until the end of your turn, and 5 temporary hit points as a bonus action. Later, you'll be able to add your wisdom modifier to persuasion checks, and you'll gain proficiency in wisdom saving throws. Afterwards, the temporary hit points you get from your fighting spirit will increase to 10, and you'll get an extra use of the feature when you enter combat with none remaining. Finally, you can trade advantage on attacks for 2 separate attacks instead once per turn at 15th level, and take an extra turn immediately when you fall to 0 hit points at 18th level. The Samurai subclass isn't one that I see used often, and it is relatively simple, but it can be extremely powerful early on with surefire strikes and extra hit points on top. But if you think that's something, just wait until you check out the Echo Knight. I haven't met very many people that weren't instantly sold on this fighter with the ability to summon shadow copies of themselves from other timelines to do battles alongside them. It's just fucking badass. And you can do this stuff right away at 3rd level when you become able to manifest an echo of yourself as a bonus action, affording you the ability to do things like swap places with it as a teleport bonus action, make attacks interchangeably as yourself or the echo, make an extra attack with it, and use it to trigger opportunity attacks. At just 3rd level, you can see how this might get kind of crazy, right? From there, you can see and hear through your echo for 10 minutes while guiding it up to 1,000 feet away from you. Gain 2d6 plus your constitution modifier in temp HP when an echo is destroyed, and even create 2 echoes at once and bounce around the battlefield in a distorted flurry of attacks and movements. Not only is this one of the coolest subclasses for fighters, but it's also one of the strongest. Fighters are some of the best single target damage dealers in the game, and this subclass gives you all the targets you could possibly want in order to spread the love. Then, finally moving on to level 4.
Hey! He hasn't said the thing yet! This video is supposed to be about broken fighters, right? What gives?
Don't worry, I'm getting there. Because at level 4, you'll get your first ability score improvement, and fighters get more of these than any class in the game. Yeah. As a fighter, you'll be able to increase your ability scores or take a feat at level 4, 6, 8, 12, 14, 16, and 19. That's 2 extra increases for a class that doesn't often need more than just high strength or dexterity. And it plays into what really blows the fighter wide open. But first, you should also know the optional rules from Tasha's Cauldron allow us to replace a fighting style or battle maneuver anytime that we would get an ability score improvement, in case you want to switch it up. Then at level 5, we'll get an extra attack when we take the attack action, meaning that our action surge can give us 4 attacks per turn, not including our bonus action. 9th level allows us to re-roll a failed saving throw once per long rest, and then do so twice per long rest at 13th level and thrice at 17th level. 11th level gives us yet another extra attack when we take the attack action, meaning that we can get at least 6 attacks in a single turn using action surge. 17th level grants us a second action surge per short rest, though we can still only use 1 per turn. And then finally, at 20th level, we get 4 attacks per attack action, far more than any class in the game. Wow.
He still hasn't said the thing yet! That's it! I'm leaving!
Whoa. Hear me out. The fighter is easily one of the best martial classes in the game in terms of combat ability and damage output, right?
Yeah.
Of course, they and the many other martial classes still fall short of spellcasters in the late game. But what if there was another way? What if we could take it all back and change one part of this to blow the doors off of 5e? Heading back to 3rd level when we pick our subclass, what if we didn't? What if we took a level in a spellcasting class instead? Suddenly, that action surge at 2nd level isn't just one more attack. Suddenly, it's an extra fireball, an extra cone of cold, an extra spell in the same turn, giving birth to the most broken Nova damage dealing tactic in the entire game. Fighters already have proficiency in Constitution saving throws for maintaining concentration for spells, and they have armor proficiencies that most casters don't. That's just the tip of the iceberg. This even works with other options like Assassin Rogue and Gloomstalker Ranger. The fighter breaks multiclassing in a way that we haven't touched on since the Sorlock, and it breaks D&D 5e by extension. There's a ton of potential here. So what other combinations have you seen? Let me know down in the comments, and be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more guides like this one. Now, go out there and make some chaos.